Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 5 ways to inspire him to be a better man, especially if he's constantly disappointing you. My guest, Rachel's husband, checked every box for narcissistic personality disorder, which she knew meant he would never change his selfish ways. Their weekly marriage counseling sessions were ugly fights. So she got a divorce attorney and started making plans to leave him. But instead, she went on a getaway that changed her life. Today, she says her husband loves, honors, and respects her, and they have an amazing life together. Same husband. She's going to tell us how she did this. Then I'll be giving out the worst relationship advice of the week award, which my husband John and I can't stop laughing and making fun of because it's so ridiculous. Can't wait to tell you about that one. All that is coming up. But first, let's talk about 5 ways to inspire him to be a better man. Being constantly disappointed in your marriage can wear you down and make you hopeless about the future. Maybe your husband disappoints you when it comes to celebrations. He forgets your anniversary or gets you a present that has nothing to do with what you like or acts like it's just another Wednesday. Or let's say he complains when you're sick because you aren't doing the things you normally do. The demoralizing message is that you're not that important except for what you contribute, not to mention his lack of compassion when you just want to be taken care of. Or he may be a disappointment in a bigger sense, like not showing up to be the dad your kids deserve. Either way, you don't have to just suck it up and continue to hurt endlessly. Here are 5 ways you can inspire your man to treat you better. Number 1, catch him doing something good. Although your husband seems to be letting you down a lot, that's not his intention. No husband wants to disappoint his wife. Quite the opposite. He married you with the intention of making you happy, not crushing your hopes and dreams till death do you part. That desire to delight you is still in him, even if you haven't seen it for a while. One way to fan the flames of that desire is to wait for him to do something that you like, even if it's something small, and pounce on him about it in a good way. You could say, I noticed you made the bed this morning, and that made me so happy. I just love that you were so thoughtful and made the bedroom look so beautiful for me. Thank you, sweet husband. Sure, there are lots of things he's doing that are letting you down, but he did this one thing right. And by focusing on that, you let him know that he can succeed in making you happy. And once he feels like a success, he's likely to look around for more ways to delight you. Number 2, express your desires in a way that inspires. Every year, Belinda complained that her husband let her down on her birthday. He never got a present or planned anything special, which left her feeling unimportant. I just want him to do something special for me, she told me. I don't know what, but you'd think he could figure it out. When I asked what would make her happy on her birthday, at first Belinda was confused. The whole point is that I want him to surprise me, she said. If I have to figure it out myself, then what's the point? Still, she conceded that there was a new restaurant she wanted to try and that she always enjoyed going for a walk on the pier on a balmy night. She expressed her pure desires to her husband by saying, I would love to try out that new Mexican place and go for a walk on the pier. Sure enough, her husband took the whole family out to the new Mexican place for her birthday. After dinner, he announced, now we're going for a walk on the pier. You might argue that it wasn't very imaginative on his part to do exactly what she'd said she wanted, but it was the best birthday she could remember having in years, which of course she told him now that she had multiple opportunities to catch him doing something good. She was amazed that when she said how much she enjoyed the birthday activities he had planned for her, he grew a foot taller and beamed. Number 3, let him know how happy he makes you. This leads to one of the most powerful ways to stop getting disappointed by your husband, telling him how happy what he's doing is making you. I'm not suggesting that you lie, but I am suggesting that it can be powerful to change your focus to what he does do instead of focusing on what he doesn't do that you wish he would. One woman told her husband how much she appreciated him working hard to support the family, even though she didn't think that would be a big deal to him. And she was surprised that he got something in his eyes right then. When you find the specific things that he does that contribute to your life and you get happy about them, they will multiply. Number 4, talk to a friend. But what do you do with those disappointed feelings that keep popping up? Telling your husband how disappointed you are, again, is just going to make him defensive. It will never inspire him to stop disappointing you. Never. Even though it seems like that's how it should work, it just doesn't work that way. If you decide you want to preserve the intimacy in your marriage, but you also need to process how disappointed you are that he doesn't like to spend time with your family, you could talk to a neutral party, like a friend. Like the time my husband walked on the new rug with his freshly polished black shoes and wrecked the rug. Sigh. I just needed to talk to someone about it, but he already felt bad enough, so I didn't want to talk to him about it. My best friends gave me the empathy I needed, so I didn't create a marital problem in addition to the problem I already had with a new rug. Number 5, fill yourself up. Sometimes my husband disappoints me because I'm already in an agitated state. I'm tired or hangry or sick, and the world does not look right. Like when I had a cold and I wanted him to bring me soup. But when he asked if I was hungry, I said no. And then I was disappointed that he didn't give me any soup. Being sick can cause lapses in logic like that for me, in my experience. When I finally admitted that I wanted soup, John got me soup, of course, because he wants to take care of me and make me happy. Most of the time, I'm pretty good at figuring out what I want and expressing that or giving it to myself so I don't get resentful toward him for not reading my mind. The more happy and fulfilled I am, the less chance I have to feel disappointed about anything my husband does because I can more easily hold on to the perspective that the man just wants to make me happy. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest, Rachel's husband, checked every box for narcissistic personality disorder, which she knew meant that he would never change his selfish ways. Their weekly marriage counseling sessions were ugly fights. So she got a divorce attorney and started making plans to leave him. But instead, she went on a getaway that changed her life. Today, she says her husband loves, honors, and respects her, and they have an amazing life together. Same husband. She's going to tell us how she did this. Rachel, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us what things were like in the bad old days in your marriage.
Well, I'm coming up on 30 years of marriage. And when my husband and I first got married, it was a shocker to me because he was the perfect gentleman in our courtship and our engagement. And he was so sweet, so kind, so gentlemanly, and just really treated me like a queen. And I thought I was getting into this amazing marriage. And quickly after we got married, I realized this is not the same man. And we had battles continuously. And it was really frustrating to me because it was always his fault. It was a lot about what he expected of me. And I continuously was never good enough. And, fast forwarding to the last couple of years, we have, we have 7 children together. And I stuck through it, bounced back and forth between thoughts of divorce. And about a year and a half ago, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I went and I visited with a divorce attorney, and we started getting things lined up and ready for the divorce. And I was absolutely sure he had NPD, or narcissist personality disorder. I went on a journey of trying to figure out what was wrong with him on the internet. And that's what I came across. And like you said, he checked all the boxes. He wasn't overt narcissist, but he checked all the boxes for covert narcissist. So that meant everybody else thought he was amazing. And to me, he wasn't amazing. And he was just continuously degrading and belittling and showing me what I was doing wrong and how I was doing it wrong, from baking bread to how I did things, with the laundry. And it was so frustrating to me that I had just had it. In fact, I had become suicidal, and I decided that I'm in a culture and a lifestyle that we don't divorce. And so I just thought that's the only way that I can get out of this. And I talked with my aunt about it, and she encouraged me to go to therapy. My aunt lives far away. So I started therapy, and a therapist worked me through the suicidal thoughts and that part of it. But then on that journey, I decided, well, okay, I need to divorce him. And that's when I went to the divorce attorney, and I started
This
feeling
was like really
liberated.
life or death in a way. Like
It
this
was
was,
life or death. But I started feeling liberated when I thought, I am going to divorce him. And I stopped caring what he thought, and I stopped bugging him about things because I was going to leave him. There was a lot to line up though to get the divorce ready. And so I knew it was going to take a long time. And all that I had read online about narcissist personality disorder is you have to line everything up exactly right before you drop the bombshell, before you serve the papers. And so I was working on that and trying to still hold this pretend thing together that we were going to move forward, being married, so that he didn't have any suspicion, so that he wouldn't turn the tables and do his NPD tactics on me and make my life miserable. And so I moved forward in that direction. And some one little piece was amazing to me through that journey is I became happier, and we actually started almost having a better marriage because I stopped caring so much about what he thought or what he did, that it made a huge difference to us together, not just me individually, but us together. And we did try marriage counseling. I conceded to marriage counseling with the intent to divorce him because I knew he would never change. He had proven that over the years, and everything I read on the internet said he would never change. And that he didn't even realize the reason he wouldn't change is he didn't even realize he was causing a problem. And he didn't realize it. When I would point it out, he wouldn't realize it. He would always shift the responsibility back to me and what I did wrong. And he never took responsibility. And that was so infuriating. So
yes.
yeah, through marriage counseling, it was really just us both taking our sides to the marriage counselor and saying, he's doing this wrong, she's doing that wrong. And I have to tell you, the first session that we had, it was winter, and we drove together, and that was fine. We did our marriage counseling session, and on the way back home, I mentioned one thing that I couldn't believe he brought up. And we stopped at a gas station, and he went off on me. We had a huge fight, and he wasn't going to start driving again till he got his way. So I just conceded. I just was like, whatever. Yep, you're right. And so he started driving again. And we lived about 20 miles from the marriage counselor. And about a mile from home, he started going off again. And I said, Oh, actually, he, I started going off. I just remembered. I started going off and he pulled out his phone and started videoing me. And I got so mad. I was just like, how dare you? Who are you recording this for? And he was like, I just want you to be able to see yourself because you always realize, after the heat of things that you were wrong, kind of thing. And I smacked the phone out of his hand and I said, let me out of this car. And it was a winter storm. He stopped the car and I got out and I walked the mile home because I couldn't even be in the same car with that man. I was so disgusted by him and so mad that I couldn't believe it. And I was even more determined that we were getting a divorce. And life intimately it was a joke. It was pretty well, I know men need a release, and that's what I was letting him do. It was just that was our intimacy level of for probably 3 or 4 years up to that moment that we had.
Oh,
So that was just it's so frustrating that he couldn't take responsibility. But the biggest thing that I noticed, just looking back at that, was it made all the difference when I didn't care. When
yeah.
I,
So
I just,
yeah. So you're miserable and unhappy, and the connection is terrible, and there's high drama, and yet you are also having an insight for yourself as you are letting go of caring about the future of this relationship. You're like, huh, things are getting
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I didn't put it together until I did read your book. So I started not caring and I thought, wow, because I don't care, I'm so much happier. I'm going to be so happy when we're not together because then I really won't care about him. And I really I was leading down on that path. And I just thought, I am going to be so much happier. I will be a free woman and I won't be under his covert narcissism and I won't be his victim anymore. And I
Yeah.
literally was his victim. Like it was
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you won't have to walk a mile in a winter storm to get home in the future,
Yeah.
right? But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So
What
then,
other ways did you feel victimized by him?
um, oftentimes, like I said, I couldn't do anything right. He would criticize everything that I was doing. And we worked together, we run a company together, and everything that I did there that touched him, a lot of the things I did didn't impact him, and he just left that alone. But if I did things that were in his sphere of influence, he he would tell me later how I did that wrong. And even if I maybe made a mistake and then corrected it, he wouldn't mention the correction. And just so much happening there that was confusing and frustrating. And then with the children, oh boy, the children, I was not mothering right. Everything I was doing
Oh,
was wrong. And we could not get on the same page with how we were going to raise the children. And they could feel it. They
oh,
knew they knew deep down that. And in fact, my at the time 9-year old, she would bring up occasionally her friends that have divorced parents, and she would say things like, "Are you and Daddy going to get a divorce? You would never get a divorce, would you?" And that was while I was planning on a divorce. She was perceptive to it enough, and he wasn't
she
even
knew
perceptive
it.
to it, but she knew it. She could tell
Wow.
that I was on that path.
Oh gosh, that must have been a painful question to answer from your 9-year-old daughter, right?
Yeah, and I had to lie, right? Because I'm still
Yeah.
setting it all up.
Yeah. So you have to say, no, no, honey,
Right.
never.
Yeah.
You have to. Yeah. Whew. Wow. So then what happened?
So then I had almost everything lined up. There was a lot because we own a business together. There was a lot to coordinate and lots of assets, lots of liabilities, and different things to juggle around with the divorce attorney. But I was getting close. And I had a friend that had moved to Texas. And I decided, okay, I need a little weekend getaway from him, from the kids. I'm just going to go visit her. And before I left, we had a big blow up. And every time we have a big blow up, I would reach out to the internet and it was almost like if I turned to the internet and then I got other people talking about it, I almost felt like validated in my position because, oh, well, other people are going through this too. So I typed something in a Google search and I came across this thing on, I think it was on Audible that said, First Kill All the Marriage Counselors by Laura Doyle. And I thought, well, that's weird, but yeah, this isn't working. Marriage counseling isn't working. I wonder what that's about. So I downloaded it on Audible, and on my trip, I decided to listen to it. And I tried to find it on Kindle, but I couldn't find it, but later found out that it had a different name. So I listened to it on my way to my friend's house, and there were skills in there that I realized that lined up with what I was seeing happening in my plan of divorcing him. I started taking care of myself better, and he started noticing that. And I stopped caring so much about what he was doing wrong and thinking more about what I could be doing. And those were two of the biggest skills that I realized that, oh, wow, I've been doing these and that's why things have been going better. It isn't because I just have decided to leave him. It's because I've actually been doing these. And so I listened to your whole story, and I listened to the skills, and I probably listened to it on that trip 3 or 4 times. I was enthralled, but at the same time, I was doubtful because I thought she must have had a man that was changeable.
Yes.
She had somebody that could recognize her value eventually, but I don't think my husband will ever recognize my value. And so I thought, well, on the flight back and on the drive back up to our little town, I thought, okay, I'm going to just experiment with it. And you say in there, I think 2 weeks, give it 2 week experiment. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give a 2 week experiment. And so I did. And within not even 24 hours, by the end of the day, when I got back home, my husband said, can you go to Texas more often? He noticed a change in me, and like instantly he realized. And the biggest thing is I started that not caring thing. It was a different not caring. It changed from not caring about what he thought. I changed to not caring about what he was doing as far as the little idiosyncrasies that he has. But then I started showing more appreciation and love, and just really showing him that I was happy to be with him. Mm-hmm. And at first it felt fake. I mean, like I couldn't change from the person that was disgusted by this man and was basically, opening up my my legs to him. Sorry to be so, but I just, I wasn't there intimately with him. And so I didn't automatically love and adore him, but I just tried as hard as I could to make it seem like I did. And it was on and off. I didn't do things perfectly, but it took a little time for me to realize, holy cow, there are things that he does for me. There are things that I didn't realize why he was criticizing me with this. And between your book and a personal coach, I was able to step back and realize, wow, his heart is there. His heart is in it for me. And that's why he was doing those things. And they started coming differently. They weren't coming so rudely and defensively. And if I didn't take them defensively, he didn't lash back. And it just made it was night and day different. So that was around the time COVID hit. And I was staying with him until we were finishing a cruise. We had a cruise planned for March, at the end of March, with our kids. And we were going to go on this wonderful cruise, and it got canceled because of COVID. And that was around the time that I went to Texas and did this research and the whole transformation. And I realized, and he stopped traveling so much because of COVID. And I thought, at first, I thought, oh boy, this is going to be interesting because I was used to him being gone, you know, probably 12 to 20 days a month. And I thought, oh boy, can I really handle him all the time? And we changed from working at the office with other people at working from home, both of us working from home. And our kids were now home to do homeschool. Ooh. And we always fought about what we were going to do with them. And it just, I was really fearful, but because of your program and recognizing those skills and steps, I was able to just take it a day at a time. And sometimes I would back up and have to like forgive myself. But there's one thing that was amazing for me. So in your book, you talk about, okay, you come to a point where you recognize that you have been part of his problem. Like I started recognizing that he seemed so controlling and he seemed so belittling and not taking responsibility because of what I was doing. And so I decided to do your challenge and apologize to him. So one day we were headed out to, we try to do a date night every Friday. Well, for a while I was declining them and saying I was too tired because when back in the old days, in the bad old days, I was too tired and I was too worn out and I didn't want to go on the date with him, obviously, because I couldn't stand being with him. So after reading your book, and we were headed to one of these Friday date nights, and it took me a while to really appreciate and enjoy them, but I adore them now. Like it's my excitement for the week. I'm so excited to go on these date nights. And one of the first ones that we did after I read your book and decided to keep doing the date nights, to start doing them again, we were on the drive to the restaurant, and I said, I have to tell you, I have messed up in how I've been the last couple years, several years. And I've been naggy and I've been controlling and I've been belittling and I've even judged you and assumed the worst in you. And I want to tell you how sorry I am for that. And he was so surprised at that he had to stop the car. He stopped the car and he pulled over and he looked at me in the eyes and he just said, "Are you being serious right now?" And I said, "Absolutely. I realize that I've really done some wrong here in our marriage." And he was in shock. He was so surprised and so touched that I would actually take the responsibility myself and recognize that he wasn't all of our problem. And from that day forward, things have, I mean, obviously we have our struggles on and off, but things have gotten so much better and we respect each other now. And we have a relationship, that relationship that I originally once thought we should have in our marriage, that for, to that point, 28 years in marriage, and I didn't have it. And looking back at it, I think we both let our guard down on the wedding day, and I became controlling, naggy. And it just built up to where he became. And thinking about coming on this show today, I thought, what can I say to, he had all the check boxes on the NPD quiz. And I thought about that and I thought, now today, if I were to do that checkbox thing, what would he score at? And almost all of them are gone. Oh. And in my like just assessment of that, I misdiagnosed him. I took him as a person that only cared about himself. But how could he not when I was trying to control what he did? everything down to this is one of the things I first started with. You call it staying on your own side of your no, two things. You call it staying on your own side of the street or staying on your own paper. And I love that concept. That was a huge one for me. And the first thing I started with was in our shower. It sounds funny, but we both have a shelf where we keep our shampoo and conditioner. And he has a shelf that I face because the shower head comes down. And he would always turn the bottles with not the right label, with the back side or the side, not the front label. And he would leave the cap open. And every day it was part of my morning routine to correct his bottles of shampoo and conditioner. And I would turn the labels so that they would be facing right. And I would close the lid. And I felt like, okay, everything's in order. I can start my day. So I decided after I read your book and I came home from Texas, I decided I'm going to start with the labels. And it was hard. I'm not OCD, but for some reason that had just become such a habit of mine that I thought I need to correct this. And I decided, no, I am not correcting this. This is where I start with staying on my side. And it was literally staying on my side of the shower.
Love it. Yeah, it's like a baby step, but it was significant. This was a daily ritual. You were starting every day correcting the way he did things.
Every day. I started it off that way and I continued throughout the day. And on and off with driving, like you mentioned in your book, and with things at work that he said or did wrong, and with how he was raising our children. I would correct him. The whole time I thought he was always saying I was doing bad. And I stepped back and realized I was telling him what he was doing wrong. And I took it as him telling me I was doing wrong because he became defensive when I would tell him he was doing it wrong. But he was really doing it like a man. And I was doing it like a woman. And I was trying to get him to do it like a woman too. I wanted the kids to have two mothers.
Yes. Yeah. I think for some reason, I think most mothers feel that way. If only fathers would be more like mothers, everything would be better. So, and when you were telling him what to do, it felt really like justified, I'm guessing, right? Like I have to do this.
Absolutely.
It's my kids, right? This really matters how we raise them. So, but when he was defending himself back, that just felt like, wow, where'd that come from? Out of the blue. He's being a jerk. Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I always thought he just doesn't get it. He thinks he's doing good for them, but they're going to get messed up if he does it that way. And I really thought that it was for the good of the children that I change how he parents.
Yes. Yes. I don't think you're the only one, but it doesn't sound like you feel that way anymore.
No, not at all. And there are times when we have a disagreement or, a difference of opinion on how we should handle a situation. And now we're able to step back from it and talk about, in fact, my husband, okay, this was another thing that really bothered me. This was what made me think he was one of the most selfish people I know. He has a hot tub meditation morning every morning of his life. Since we've been together, he meditates in the hot tub in the morning. Well, as soon as the kids got to the school age, that was during school time, like getting them ready for school. And, I mentioned we have 7 children. We have 4 at home at this point. But that became my resentment time because I would see him out there hot tubbing and I'm running around the house just doing this and this and this.
Like a crazy woman on a time deadline. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it made me resent him so bad. I just kept thinking, he is so selfish. How dare he expect me to do all of this while he just sits there and enjoys himself? And part of my recovery after reading your book was realizing that number one, I hadn't even voiced my need of help to him in, just in a way that would make sense. I did it more in a way like, oh yeah, and you get to hot tub in the morning. I did it in a way that, of course, naturally he would be defensive or even protect his time because that was his special time. So I decided, after reading your book, I decided to try and attempt the discussion around it. And I almost brought it up several times and I never did. I decided never to bring it up because that was his side of the paper. That was, that was his paper. He was choosing that. But without even bringing it up, guess what has happened?
What happened?
He goes to the hot tub a half an hour later and he now helps me with the kids and helps me with the breakfast, helps me with the morning dishes, which he never did dishes before, never. But it was all a change. And I didn't even have to say anything because of the skills I was practicing. He recognized that I cared about myself with the self-care. I cared about myself. And he recognized that he was doing good because I was giving him what you call spouse fulfilling prophecies. And I was telling him when he would do little things, if maybe he came and got one of the boys, I don't know, one of the boys' things ready, I would say, wow, that is so helpful. I love that you help me in the morning.
Oh.
And instead of telling him what I like, reprimanding him for you're not helping me in the mornings, I told him when he did one little thing, you always help me in the mornings. I love that you help me in the mornings. And he decided to switch his schedule a half an hour back so that he could actually do what I said he always did.
Amazing. So this is the same husband that you were convinced had narcissistic personality disorder.
Absolutely. Same guy. And it was amazing to me to see the transformation. And it wasn't overnight. There were still times when I thought, oh, he's selfish. Oh, he's so selfish. But over time, and the more I worked on me and making sure I was taking care of me, the more the more I noticed that he wanted to take care of me.
So it's like that gentleman that wooed you, the one that you dated before you got married. He's back, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He is back, and that is the man I married, and that is the man he wanted to be all these years.
Yeah.
And I stifled it.
Oof. It must have been, I mean, it's such a painful moment because I remember feeling the same way about my husband, that I had really squashed him from being his best self that he really wanted to be. And but you sound very accountable. And even this, when I hear you saying like he's so selfish, that sounds like it was your old spouse fulfilling prophecy, and you very consciously chose new ones that really stood for his greatness, it sounds like.
Yeah. And that was a shift for me, and it took some coaching from my personal coach to help me through that. Sometimes I would bring up situations with her and she would say, now what does that serve? She'd ask, what are you serving if you tell him that? And I recognized, oh, that's not serving any purpose. That doesn't help anything. And so over the time, I started realizing, if I can't, it's almost like what Thumper says, if I can't say anything nice, I'm not going to say it at all.
I remember Thumper. Right. So you started to retrain your thinking. Sounds like a great coach, actually, because so you would probably have those moments you think about it yourself, and then you'd probably be asking yourself, now, what does that serve? And you'd be like, oh, nothing. Never mind. I'm not going to go down that dark alley anymore. And
Yeah,
instead,
she did a really good job just helping me like internalize it and recognize for me what that meant and where that was taking me. Instead of telling me where that was taking me, she helped me to realize, oh, yeah, you're right.
So you were drawing those conclusions yourself. She doesn't know, what's best for Rachel. She can only ask these powerful questions. And then it sounds like you came up with some powerful answers for yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
So what's your marriage like now?
So now, okay, the things I did leave out is, and I kind of alluded to it, he never helped with housework, nothing. And that was the other part of, I just thought, oh, he's so selfish that he thinks I should do this all alone. And if we were going to have a visitor, he may help tidy up, and that was the only time. And I thought for sure it's because he's narcissist because he cares what other people think, so he's going to clean up for other people.
More evidence. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so now, looking at my marriage now and just being where I'm at now, there are, he literally, like, he does dishes with me every day. He never did
Every
dishes before.
day?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah, he does dishes with me every day. And if you had have asked me even a year ago, would he ever do dishes with you? I would have laughed. I would have said, no way.
No
He,
way.
in fact, one day he came in while I was doing dishes, and this was in the bad old days. And he goes, why are you doing those dishes? And I said, because they need to be done. And he goes, well, you're better than that. And that was another reason I thought he was narcissistic. I thought, oh my goodness, that's why he doesn't do them. He thinks he's better than that. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, you should have the kids doing the dishes, kind of thing. And I said, well, sometimes they do them and sometimes I do them. Like, it's part of a family, it's part of a house. But that didn't help him to realize it by telling him that, he didn't start doing dishes that day. I'll tell you that.
No, no, I bet he didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. But now he wants to please me. He does the shopping. He does our grocery shopping every Saturday. He goes to the grocery store and he does our shopping. And he brings me flowers home every Saturday from the
You're
grocery
kidding.
store.
And these Friday night dates are happening
Yep. We
again?
have Friday night dates. And for a little while, I had to take my, I had to take my mom brain off. I sometimes have that's sometimes why I would go on his side of the street, because moms they're
Yeah.
involved in their kids and they're there to
Yeah.
help them. And I was being his mom, and I've completely removed that. Especially I started with date nights, and I am more of a listener, and it's been really fun because as I listen, then he will realize, oh, wait, I've been talking the whole time. And then he'll ask me a question and we'll just have a great conversation back and forth. And that's just been so, that alone has made a huge difference to me. And then the next one is our intimacy. That has changed. And it took a little time to rebuild that. It was because I had blocked things. But now he is soft and gentle with me. He cares about how I feel. And he literally will ask, I don't know how to explain it. Not ask, but I can just tell that he cares more about the relationship than the release that I was talking about that all men need. I don't even think of it that way anymore. And it is a relationship building time.
Wow. So this was before it felt like kind of wifely duty, like just kind of get
Yep.
it over with. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's something much more tender and
Yeah.
passionate and intimate and vulnerable, it sounds like, as well.
Yeah.
Is that
And that was why it took me the longest. I had to be more vulnerable. That was hard for me because I'm a pretty strong, independent person, and
yeah.
it took some softening for me, and but it's made all the difference in our relationship.
So the softening, that was part of your journey that, was as you're retraining your thinking and approaching things differently. That's part of what came out of this. And then, I mean, but it sounds like your husband has also transformed. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
he's a different guy.
Oh, such a different guy. I would have never guessed that he would just, without me telling him to do it, that he would help with the kids in the morning. Never.
Yeah. move his hot
Never.
tub time by half hour. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, let's go back to your 9-year-old daughter who was, it sounds like pretty scared that she was going to lose her home court advantage that she has
Hmm.
now. How has it affected her and your other children that are still at home?
Yeah. So that has been a huge change too. That 9-year-old actually was acting out a lot. If she would have a disagreement with one of her siblings, she would scream, she would slam doors, she would, and that was part of our frustration with parenting because I had a different idea for her than what he did when she would do those things. And she doesn't do that anymore. She doesn't slam doors. She doesn't scream. She still gets frustrated and she'll just remove herself from the situation if she can't handle the discussion, but the home, the temperature level of our home was like at 900 degrees. We were just all on edge. And I have older children that have left the home and have since admitted that it was hard to live in this house because there was always tension. There was always my 26-year-old daughter. She says, "You and Dad were always trying to prove each other wrong in front of the kids." Like she remembers that from her childhood, that we were always trying to prove each other wrong. And for her to remember that, I just kind of was like beside myself because I didn't realize it until she mentioned that. And I thought, oh, that's true. We were not on the same team. And it really came down to the fact that I thought he should be doing things differently. And I knew better.
Mm. Oh yeah.
But
Well, you're not the only one, but it's I'm sure heartbreaking to hear your daughter tell you that, but how hopeful that you get a do-over with your younger children. You get to do some different role modeling of what's
yeah.
possible for them. What would you say? What's your best tip for a woman who is also saying, look, my husband checks every single box on narcissistic personality disorder. I've taken him to a professional. He's been diagnosed. He has it for sure. And she wants to create what you've created where she gets flowers every Saturday and date nights every Friday, and he helps her with the dishes every day. And the lovemaking is tender and intimate. What should she do? How should she start?
Oh, that is such a great question. And it really is, it's easier said than done. It's a journey. It's been a journey for me because I've had to let go of that whole premise that he was NPD and just release the thought of that and recognize that I could make a difference. And so the biggest advice that I have is start with you. Make a difference with how you are doing things and start with you. Take care of yourself and recognize those times that he wants to take care of you and be vulnerable enough to accept that. And starting, like you said earlier, the baby steps, those baby steps are what will take you from that kind of relationship to a much better relationship in overall. Because, and I would never have believed it. And through my journey, I would still read things about narcissist personality disorder. I have to admit, I would still go
Sure.
back and say, yep, he still is. He still cares more about what other people think. He's still stonewalling me. And if I brought something up to my relationship coach, she would say, where did it start? And we would work backwards. And it always started with me. It always started with me.
Darn it.
And I hated that. And it was sometimes I like dreading bringing anything up because I thought,
Right.
is she going to say, where did it start? But every time I think back to it and every time, but I was justified in that, right? It
Yeah.
should start with me because I'm right. Kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yes. Yeah, it is. You're really pointing out something so valuable, I think, which is it really does take a lot of courage, a lot of humility to even to get a coach and to be willing to share the details of the interactions that you're having at home. It's not for the faint of heart, is it? It really takes
No.
a lot of commitment and accountability. I hear
Yeah.
that all over you. And I admire that so much because look how far it's brought you. I mean, what a difference from. So, I mean, I take it the divorce is not on anymore, right? That's
Nope. I paid the original bill of having that initial work. I stopped the work where it was. I didn't even finish out all of the things. Um, and we still haven't gone on our cruise yet, but
yeah, no,
I'm excited. I'm excited for that day because it's going to be a different cruise than it would have been,
it
because that was just
is.
a I'm gonna make it through the cruise and I'm gonna avoid him. I literally was planning on how much I was going to avoid him and just play with the kids and just be with the kids the whole time. And he can do his thing where he always just reads his own book and works on his iPad, and he'll be fine because that's what he likes to do. And it's going to be a totally different cruise. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, yeah, because you're going with the man you love and who you feel adored
Yep, I'm going
by.
with my boyfriend.
You're going with your boyfriend now instead of that narcissistic husband you had for all those years.
That I
So
was stuck with. I really felt stuck. And now
stuck,
I'm excited to be
stuck
with
to the
him.
right, stuck to the point of suicide looking like a better option than the shame
Yep.
of getting divorced. And yeah, I mean, I'm super impressed with everything you've accomplished. It is enormous to overcome that. That was a just a very firm belief you had about him being a narcissist, and you have really gradually over time totally shifted that perspective, put on your new perspectives, and you see him differently. So, what would you, if you could go back in time and talk to Rachel from before and tell her what you know now, what would you say to her?
That's a good question. I would it's probably similar to the advice that I would give other women. And it's really just recognize what he's doing is like, recognize the intention behind what he's doing rather than assuming the worst and assuming he's trying to belittle me or prove me wrong. I was so stuck in that and really it was my coach that helped me realize what was his intention, where was his heart in that, and why did he say those things that he said. And even that bread making incident, I brought that up with my coach, and it was it was it was funny. So through COVID, I decided to start making bread, and sometimes it would work out, and sometimes it didn't. But in that time, he would sometimes come over and say, "Well, is that he'd say something, and I just would fly off like, I've done the research, I'm doing this isn't you." And for a little while I thought, well, me staying on my side of the street means you need to too. And I would fly off. But for the old me, it would just be stepping back and recognizing what he's doing for me and why he does it for me. I would always assume the worst and not recognize that he cared. He genuinely cared about me. And that's why he was doing what he was doing.
He wanted your
And
bread to turn out delicious. He wanted you to be
yeah,
successful. He wanted you to be happy.
exactly. And in his way, that's how he was doing it. And I was taking it as, he thinks he's better than me. He thinks he could do this better than me. And I would say that with driving. If I was driving and he would say something, I would say, if you think you can do better, then you do it, and with so many things. And I did that with parenting, with the bread making, just so many things that it, I'm sure he was just like, who is this woman I married? But overall, just thinking of the main thing that I would tell the old me is care more about yourself, which will in turn help you to care more about your relationship.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing that has helped me is caring more about myself and actually doing things that I enjoy and not feeling like I need approval or attention while I do it. I started with little things when I first started on this journey, and it was just, I would just soak in the sun and read a book or listen to good music, just little things that would feed me enough to feel like, okay, I can do this. And so that's probably the biggest word of advice that I would give is just care enough about yourself that you can have the caring for your relationship.
Wow, I love it. Well, you are just an incredible beacon of hope for what's possible for resetting a 30-year marriage from like totally miserable to it sounds like connected, joyful, intimate, passionate, playful. And I just couldn't be more inspired to hear your story and all that you've accomplished. Congratulations on and changing the legacy of your family for all 7 of your kids. Really, to on some level, I'm sure it's touching every one of their lives in a beautiful way.
Thank you. And thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So thank you for sharing what you shared with each of us, because that made a huge difference in my journey.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Great to hear. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the worst relationship advice of the week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And my husband, John, and I cannot stop laughing and making fun of this week's stinky advice, which is to beware of, are you ready for this? Beware of toxic positivity. Toxic positivity. According to one article I saw, toxic positivity is the belief that no matter how dire or difficult a situation is, people should maintain a positive mindset. The article says that toxic positivity is when you express disappointment or sadness and someone tells you that happiness is a choice. It goes on to say that you should learn to recognize the signs of toxic positivity, such as brushing off problems rather than facing them. I remember thinking my husband brushed off our marriage problems a lot back in the bad old days. I thought it was just avoidance or he was just too lazy to address them. Looking back, though, I think he was pretty smart to just lay low and not get baited into a fight by the barrage of criticism that was coming out of my mouth. I was disappointed and sad at him a lot. And a lot of times it was because he wasn't making me happy. I can just imagine myself saying in the bad old days, but I'm not happy for the umpteenth time. And him saying, happiness is a choice. And then I could have said, see, that is toxic positivity and it is ruining our relationship. So labeling his behavior as toxic positivity would have been one more way to be totally off my paper and focusing on his paper, which never led anywhere I wanted to go. That's not where my power is. My power, and I've learned I have a lot of power, is on my paper, where all the things I control are, like my decisions, my thoughts, my attitude, my tone of voice, what I eat for breakfast, how I decide to deal with a challenge. Now, I admit that saying happiness is a choice, right? When someone is describing her disappointment or sadness is not very empathetic. And we all need empathy. That's part of what connects us is this this human experience that we're all having, this common experience of having painful and joyful emotions. But when I was perpetually stuck in disappointment and sadness, when I was complaining about him all the time and how he wasn't making me happy, I can sure see why he'd want to remind me that it was up to me to be happy. That happiness is my decision, no matter what my circumstances, especially since I was always trying to outsource that job to him. I like for my feelings to get their day in the sun. It's no good to squish them down. I've tried that. It didn't work because then they came out sideways later, and I would completely lose my dignity in a fit of resentful, ugly rage. Not proud to say it. When I'm bent out of shape for whatever reason, which is not nearly as often anymore as before I started practicing the intimacy skills, I love being able to identify those feelings and acknowledge them. I love being able to honor them to myself and with other people. I love being able to own the expectations that made me disappointed, or the fear that I was buying into and that was behind my urge to control, or the hurt that was under my anger. Every time. It's always there. It feels like a superpower to be able to do that, actually, especially compared to my old days of wallowing in disappointment or bulldozing or raging. No, thank you. I love knowing how to be accountable for my part instead of wasting my energy looking for the traits of toxic positivity in someone else. Even if that was a thing, even if someone else had it, it never did me any good to diagnose someone else and then focus on what they should change. That was just a recipe for more disappointment and sadness. For that reason, the advice to watch for signs of toxic positivity in others is the very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about 3 secrets to succeeding in business and love with the same person. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that I got hooked on Brussels sprouts. I've been eating so many lately that I might start speaking French and Flemish and German and Dutch.